Hey guys, Toby and Mathis here, and today we're going to talk about 3 partnership mistakes that can literally wipe you out overnight. And I want to kind of set the table and kind of go over a scenario. So 3 brothers get together, they enter into a partnership, they're doing flips, and everything looks really great until one day the brothers come home and their accounts are all zero, because they didn't understand what we're going to be going over today. So I brought in Eric Winkler. Welcome, first off.
Thank you, Toby. Thank you for having me.
And Eric teaches. He's a business advisor. He works with Anderson Business Advisors, but he teaches on this, and he has for a lot of years. How many years have you been doing this?
20.
Yeah. So you've seen a few things.
A few, yes.
And so Eric and I are going to kind of go through and break down what's the risk, and Eric has a ton of stories, and I always like hearing real life stories. I don't know about you guys. But let's start with the basics. All right, so Eric, what is a partnership?
A partnership in the simplest terms is when 2 or more people want to get together on a venture. That venture could be flipping houses, it could be opening up a bakery. It doesn't really matter what it is. It's just 2 or more people getting together towards a common business purpose.
Does it have to be in writing? Does it have to be an LLC? Does it have to be a limited partnership or anything like that? Or can I just, you and me decide we're gonna flip a house?
Happens every day, Toby. It happens every day. No, you do not have to have these things in writing. No, you don't have to have all this documentation or entities or, I mean, think about how many people go in on something, on a business together, and they decide that they're gonna own this dry cleaning business together. There's no contracts, there's no nothing. They're just, it's a partnership.
And why are people doing it?
Good question. That's usually the first question I ask partners. Why are you getting into this partnership? And it's a real question. The reason I ask that is because I'm trying to figure out what the motivations are. Most times in a partnership, what people are looking for is they're looking to offset themselves and add for themselves. What I mean by that is there's usually something that the other person is bringing to the table. So maybe someone has some time, the other one has finances. You get the idea. You're usually offsetting each other or complementing each other. In addition to that, accountability partners, because a lot of folks, I don't know about you, Toby, I've started a lot of things, never really quite finished them because I lost interest. So many different reasons.
All right, so let's talk about this. Then what do people misunderstand about the sharing risk of partnerships?
Right, so going back to what you were saying, so can 2 folks get together and start a business together without anything in writing or structures? Sure you can, but what you don't realize is that all of your personal liability can bleed into the business and onto the other partner if there's no separation.
Yeah, so if Eric and I got together and we opened up a pizza shop, and we did not do any sort of entity, we didn't do the right structure, we just together said we're going to be a partnership, we're going to file a 1065, this happens every day. Eric's personal debts become my debts in a way, like it could actually come right into the partnership. And the partnership debts are also my debts. Like there's a lot of risk.
There's a lot of risk, and then the other side of it too is there's no stopping that liability, right, Toby? So I mean, you're talking about my personal debts become yours and yours become mine, but what if one of the partners is just kind of dips out, you know? There's a lot of debt in the organization, not the organization, but the company, and one person leaves. Yeah. Well, you can be on the hook for the whole thing now.
So there was actually a story over at UNLV, and it was a company that was on its way up, and they had all these mentors coming in, judging it, and they got together, and they you know, an older person said, hey, I'm going to show you the right way, and they entered into it. They just opened up a business together with somebody. And then they took the money and ran to Hawaii. After everybody put money in, then one of the partners just took off. That's the part of partnerships that people don't appreciate, is you're still on the hook for that. You don't have a structure, you're personally on the hook for that.
And you don't really have any getting your money back either. I've had a partnership situation where these 2 partners were 50-50 on the bank account and everything else. And one of the partners, similar scenario, they took the money and ran, so to speak. They consulted with an attorney and they're like, well, you guys are 50-50 partners, so it's half theirs. I mean, technically they owe you half, but good luck.
Yeah, good luck collecting on that. It's a marriage. So that's the thing about partnerships. And if you don't want to go in half-cocked, you want to go in very orderly about, like, this is what I'm willing to share. This is my separate property type stuff. Like, I'm going to isolate the liability. I'm going to isolate how we're operating. Here's how the profits work. You could do all that using an entity. We'll get to that. All right, let's talk about the brothers, though, because that was your story. I just stole it from you, this lock, stock, and
fine.
barrel. But
There.
explain what happened there.
Absolutely. So there's three brothers. They've known each other since college, and they decided one day to go to a real estate seminar. And they went to the real estate seminar, and they decided that they were intrigued. I mean, they've already been watching HGTV. I mean, they want to be real estate investors, and they feel like this is our thing. So the three of them, they get together, and they start rehabbing homes. They got really successful really quick. I mean, we're talking in the span of 2 to 3 years, multi-million dollars a year. They they got it. Whatever happened, right market, right time, whatever, who cares? It worked. They were happy. So fast forward, we're 2 to 3 years into this, and one of the partners, their job is acquisitions. There's a finance guy and then the contract guy. So the acquisitions guy is, looking for deals. He identifies another deal, talks to the finance guy. Finance guy is like, "Yep, we've got it. I mean, we're good. Let's get it." So they're calling the bank, initiating the wire, and the bank tells them, it's not funny, but it is. We can't. You don't have the funds to do that. And they're like, what do you mean we don't have the funds to do that? We have the funds to put a down payment on this property. We're talking about like a $200,000, $300,000 property, so nothing crazy. Like, we definitely have that in the bank account. They're like, you definitely don't have that in the bank account. They hang up the phone, and one of the brothers gets online. The finance guy gets online. He's looking. Everything's gone. The money is gone. There's no money in the account. So he's looking at his partner. He's like, what's going on? I don't know. What did you do? Nothing. So they're going through the transactions. So they call the third partner. Voicemail. So they call the third partner, texting the third partner. This goes on for about a week, and they can't get a hold of him. They're like, well, did he run off with the money, or what happened here? So they're thinking the worst. Now remember, they've been like really, really tight friends since college, so it's raising a lot of question marks. It finally, in about 2-3 weeks, the third partner comes back to the guys, hat in hand, and he says, guys, I'm so sorry. This is my fault. The third partner, remember the contractor, he is a general contractor, and he was running a general contracting business before they started this partnership. Well, unfortunately, he fell on hard times. He got a lot of he had a lot of debt, which generated a lot of lawsuits, which generated a lot of judgments, and they wound up, the different creditors got judgments against him. And as you know, Toby, if you have your name on bank accounts and they have a judgment, all I have to do is, judgment, bank account with your name on it, my money.
Yep. And so they went and they grabbed the partnership's assets. And so why was the partnership even liable? Because that was his personal debt. That was
his
business debt. That was his personal debt because they didn't isolate it.
Because he was listed on that bank account. His name was on that bank account, so they allowed the bank to, or the creditor, sorry, to take the assets.
And this isn't even as a signer. Like, this is because it was a partnership. There was no structure. There was no limited liability.
Nothing.
They were on the hook. So let's talk about this. At what point does this become avoidable versus unavoidable? Let's say that you've been operating, there's so many stories, guys, right? Like sisters get together and they start a business, and then one of them does some stuff funky on the side, brings in some liability. When does it become like, hey, I can fix it?
Early on, Toby. I mean, it's got to be done in the beginning, because this is not one of those things that you can call like, I have a problem now and we need to fix this, and this should have been an LLC instead of just Toby and Eric on the bank account.
Yes, when that liability is incurred, if it's not already set up, it's too late. Horse has left the barn. So let's talk about the 3 mistakes then, because we wanted to go over 3. What's mistake number 1?
So mistake number one is not isolating the business entity, or just isolating yourself from the business. Okay.
Explain why that's important.
So we want to make sure that, remember, as we were talking about in the beginning, if Toby and I go into business and own a pizzeria, my debts become his debts, but the partnerships become ours. There's just no separation of liability. I mean, the first step that we need to do is just separate ourselves from the company. I mean, the company needs to operate on its own, so we're protected from those liabilities. Let's just start there.
So if somebody gets sick from eating pizza, or they slip and fall. We have a pizzeria and we got some tomato sauce on the floor. Somebody takes a header and they sue. I don't want my house to disappear, my retirement accounts, my bank brokerage accounts, my other assets, my a bunch of my rentals. And I don't want those all exposed because somebody took a header in a pizza shop that I am a part owner in. So if we
Absolutely.
isolate the liability of the pizza shop, put it in an LLC, corporation, some sort of limited liability entity, then we can isolate that so they can't come after me. Is that right?
Absolutely.
All right. And again, when do you have to do that?
In the beginning, Toby. I mean, because unless you can anticipate when you're going to have a problem or a lawsuit or someone's going to take a header in your pizza shop, it needs to be done in the beginning.
All right, then let's talk about risk number 2, or mistake number 2.
So that's bleed over. So bleed over of liability. Okay, so it's great now that we've set up an entity, let's call it an LLC just for our purposes right now.
Okay.
So we set up an LLC, we've got our pizza shop, things are going great, but we still have that issue where if I have liability, it could potentially affect our business. So if I have debts from another business or personal debts or medical debts or anything like that, if I have a judgment against me, that could still potentially harm the company because if they get a lien against the entity, that can hurt us. So I don't want to bleed my stuff over to the business. And that's just financial liability. There's so many other things that we'll talk about a little later.
And there's no way really to get like debt, divorce, all sorts of court
Death.
orders, death, yeah, all those things can affect the business. So when you're setting these up, that's why it's not as easy as everybody thinks. You're looking at it saying, how do we address, for example, do I have to do a deep dive background check on all, if I'm going to do business with somebody? Well, again, it's kind of like you're getting married, so you probably want to do as much as you can, but not everybody does.
No.
I just want to be able to sleep at night. I could draft some of that into an operating agreement, for example.
Oh, 100%. As a matter of fact, usually when I talk to people about this subject and I go into that and I tell them how involved it is and how you're really getting married, it's very close. Then I ask people, I was like, well, now that you know this, what are you going to be asking your partners? You're like, firstborn child, blood sample, etc. So I get it. It doesn't have to get that crazy. I mean, you can set it up so that you are protected, and I mean, you still need to do your due diligence on your partner, but you're never really going to know everything that's going on in their lives. So it's more important to protect against that. Back to your statement about operating agreements. Yes, you need to outline things in the beginning. So things like how does this company operate? Who's going to be responsible for what? How are we going to take profits? Oftentimes, Toby, I know you've seen this a million times, like you're the money man, I'm the operations guy. You don't have time, I don't have money. Cool. So Toby's going to put more money into the pizzeria, I'm going to be tossing the dough. All right, so now when we start taking profits, does Toby get paid back faster? So if we're 50-50 partners, do I get 50%, he gets 50% plus 10? Or do I lose 10 to start paying him off?
Are you getting paid?
That's a great question too. These are all very good questions.
Who's in charge? Who gets to make the decision? Is it managed by the members of that endeavor, or is there a separate management company, or is it one person designated? When profits are distributed, are they pro rata, non-pro rata?
You got to know this stuff in the beginning, because what I've noticed is when it's hypothetical, like Toby and I are talking about the pizzeria right now, and if you're starting your business, you folks are on the same page, right? You're conquering the world. You're going out to make your mark. This is the best time to have that conversation, because in my experience, as soon as you sprinkle a little bit of money or a little bit of problem into there, emotion takes over, logic drops out, and now you're not even communicating anymore. But if we have something written, even if we disagree, we can at least have a baseline on how to operate this.
And I would say this is kind of like, if you, again, using the marriage scenario, a lot of people go into marriage, just everything's hunky-dory, no prenup, no nothing, and then divorce. And divorces happen in businesses too. And if you don't have a written agreement on how that's going to look, it could get just as messy and nasty. So you want to have these things. And you mentioned death.
Yeah.
We're all going to pass, and if you have partners, somebody's going to pass before the others. So you better have something in writing as to how that's going to operate. Does the surviving spouse become a partner that makes decisions? Are you able to buy them out? Are you able to prevent them from coming in and accessing the bank accounts and just shutting the thing down? All those are things that you need to have in an operating agreement.
And preventing things that you may not foresee. Again, 20 plus years of doing this, and Toby can attest to this too. I could tell stories all day long, but just another example. What if your partner gets mad at you and I'm smiling because it's kind of funny. So what if your partner gets mad at you and sells to like someone you really don't like?
Yep.
There's nothing to stop them from doing that. You can't unless you have it inside of your operating agreement and agreement. And
I still remember when I was a younger attorney, there was a case where there was two friends and they were developing land, and it was in Washington State. And one of their friends was in his 50s and had a heart attack and passed away. And the wife blamed the other partner and said it's because of the pressure, it was because of the stress, and she wanted to kill that deal. And the surviving friend, the other partner, was trying to continue that development. He was going to face complete financial loss. They were halfway through, and she wanted to kill it, just kill it. And she did. She did because there was no written agreement. Like, I think they had a cruddy, partnership. This was back in the 90s, so it was like before LegalZoom and all these others where you could just go grab a crappy agreement.
You probably would have been better off without it.
You probably bought a book and did it. Yeah, the same difference, but it was just horrific. And I remember it playing itself out over about a 2-year period. He got bled dry because she could stop everything that they were doing, and it was just a mess. And it's kind of like, we don't like thinking the bad stuff before, but the best time to think about the exit is before you enter the room. You want to make sure that you have some sort of agreement, and that's what guys like Eric are for. All right, let's go over mistake number 3.
So just the wrong structure set up from the get-go, just not having things in place, not having a proper structure. What does that proper structure look like? It depends, okay? It depends on if it's an active business, if it's going to be for rentals, is it going to be for flipping homes, is it for a pizzeria? The point being is the ideal structure is going to deal with the issues that we've been talking about. So separating ourselves from the liability, but then giving us our own freedom and protection from each other as well. So we want to be protected from the business, protected from each other as well.
And where do taxes intersect in this?
Great question, because I'm sure you can attest to this too. I'm on the phone every day with business owners, and I can tell you, we always talk about the 4-prong approach, right? We always talk about, it's asset protection, we've got to worry about taxes, estate planning, and business planning. Most of the time, someone has their eye so hyper-focused on one, the other 3 are just missing and destroying them. And these are active business owners. I'm not going to do another story, but there was a...
I love stories.
Okay, great. This is a great one. So there's another active business owner. He is concerned about one rental property, okay? He has one rental property, and you should be. That's fair, but wait till you see where I'm going with this. He has 3 operating businesses through 3 different states, towing companies with vehicles and people driving these vehicles as a sole proprietor.
And he's worried about that
the one rental property.
Yeah.
It gets better. That rental property, it's a family member. So I'm like, we should protect that.
What about the real liability?
What about this stuff over here? So to your point, though, we were talking about where does the taxes intersect. That's going to intersect on, that's why I said it's going to depend how we set things up. Just running out there and setting up an LLC is not really going to answer your questions for you. It's not going to solve your problem for you. You really need to take a look at the nature of the income, but you also need to look at the nature of the individual that you're setting it up for too. So, just a wacky example. So let's just say we set up a partnership and we determine that this is going to be for flipping homes. So you and I are going to flip homes. So we've got our LLC. So how do we own that LLC? My answer might be different than yours. So you may be trying to keep income away from your personal tax returns so you can do other things.
I may have it as a C Corp that
you may have a
interest.
C Corp. I may have it as an S Corp because I need it to flow through so I can actually qualify for more funds. So it's very individualized. You need to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, and just I'm going to reemphasize the 4 points because you really are looking at like asset protection's one. Some people get really focused on that, which is nothing wrong with it. Just don't ignore the other 3. Tax, because if you set up an LLC, especially if we're doing a business, pizza shop, for example, we have the choices. We have a partnership, we have an S Corp, we have a C Corp. And that's, even if it's just an LLC, I can choose any of those. I could be a traditional C Corp, I could be a traditional corporation, make an S election. All of them have pros and cons, which is why you want to talk to somebody who actually knows what they're doing. But here's the thing. Setting up an LLC, if you just get that tends to be horrible advice, because beyond tax, then we look at business planning. Is it going to get credit? Is it going to hurt you? Like, everybody wants to have a zero tax bill, learns they can't get a mortgage, and it's really difficult. If it's a separate business, maybe I'm better off being taxed is one way over another. And then from an estate planning standpoint, what happens when one of those partners passes away? Seen this happen so many times where families end up inheriting businesses, and only like there's 3 kids and one of them was in the business and the other 2 weren't, and the 2 that weren't, of course, say sell everything, and the other one says I want to operate it, and you end up with a mess if things aren't in writing. So is it really just horrible advice to say just set up an LLC?
It's horrible. I've got to do it because this just happened 3 weeks ago. Had a client that I was speaking to, and that was the advice that they were giving by a rather famous real estate person who does education and training. And they said, all you need is an LLC. Let's back it up. So this is 4 partners. 4 partners are involved, and they're buying trailer parks. They're buying 5 trailer parks in Texas. And the advice that they got was just set up an LLC. Thankfully, one of them, the money person, of course, said, you know, that doesn't sound exactly right. So he booked a consultation with us. I had the consultation with him, went over the structure that I would set up for him. He got his other 3 partners on the phone. He's like, if you want to work with me, this is the way that we need to set it up.
Yeah. Yeah, he's the money guy. So
Exactly.
Sometimes when you're a non-money guy, they're looking at you like, my guy.
We don't need all that.
You want to look at all 4. Just make sure. So let's talk about 3 steps to make sure that you're a success. So again, I like simple rules. Can you go over 3 steps so that somebody knows how do I do this? How do I set these things up? How do I make sure that I don't make a mistake? I don't know what I don't know. How do I make sure that I'm addressing everything?
So step 1 is you want to set up the partnership entity. This is what we were talking about originally, is making sure that we're separated from the liability of our business, whether that's being a rental property, pizzeria that we keep going back to. It doesn't matter what the business is. We want to be separated from whatever that business is doing. That would be the first step.
And it might be different. So if it's an active business versus if it's a passive, hey, for example, if I just own a brokerage account and I'm partnering with my family office, my corporation, maybe you and I are just buying real estate. Maybe we're flipping real estate. All those factor in.
All
right?
different structures. What we set up will change constantly, but setting up something won't. I want to bring this up before I forget it, because we've been talking about so many good things. For any of you out there that are thinking, well, I'm partnered with my family, so that's okay. It's worse.
Yes.
I'm telling you, hands down, much worse than partnering with a stranger. I'm not telling you not to partner with your family. I'm telling you to set very, very abundantly clear expectations day one, because they will come back to bite you if you don't.
Yeah, because whenever you add emotion and money, it tends to get ugly when there's a dispute. And just look at every divorce that's out there. With family members, you can't divorce your family, but you can certainly beat each other up like you're getting divorced.
And the expectations, right? So you have, just like employer-employee, we have certain expectations, and you may exceed them in your head, but you can't in real life. But with family members, we do it all the time. So.
All right, number 2.
Number 2 is the individual protection. So now we've got the partnership protection, we need to have individual protection. Again, what we set up is going to change whether it's active or passive or broker, and what are you doing. But what the bottom line is, a good core philosophy that I've gone with is we need to be separate but equal. Okay, so we want to have the protection, we want to have our company, but I don't want to be in Toby's business, and I sure as heck don't want Toby in my business, because it's none of his business. The pizzeria is our business. But then when we take the distribution of profits, so what are some of the things I'm talking about? Once we take the distribution of profits, everything flows into my company and everything flows into his company. So maybe I want to fund my kids' IRAs. Maybe Toby doesn't have any kids. Maybe I want to set up a self-directed solo K. I want to set up a solo K for myself. Well, Toby's not really into solo K, he's into real estate. Okay, well, we don't even have to have these discussions. We can as friends, but we don't have to do them as necessarily like this are our funds, this is what we do. We have that freedom to do what's going on. In addition, especially with real estate, because I know a lot of the people we talk to are real estate investors, having that freedom as well. Because if you think you're not going to disagree, you're clearly mistaken, or you haven't spent enough time with one human being long enough, because you will disagree. This gives you the ability to disagree and stay very strong as a partnership. So we're in a partnership. I want to invest in this property. You don't think it's a good time and it's not a great idea. So I can use my company and invest in that property, and it doesn't affect the partnership, doesn't affect us.
And by the way, this is why you have a good operating agreement, because if it's a opportunity for that LLC, you better make sure that it's spelled out that you guys don't have to run everything through the LLC, that you're able to go do your own things. Otherwise, you're going to find a nasty lawsuit. If we set up again, using an online service or something, a standard operating agreement, and I do something funky, you may have just locked yourself into, I get 50% of anything else he does, because hey,
we're partners.
Yeah, we're partners in real estate, and you're like, hey, you had other opportunities, you needed to bring them to the partnership, I want that. And I'm like, hey, no, I was doing my stuff and you're doing your stuff. No.
And the big selling point for going, I know I'm going back and forth a little bit here. I was talking about the money guy who set up his partnership. One of the big selling points for him was they're going to need they don't need financing right just yet, but they're going to need financing to continue the growth that they want to do. And I said, well, that's great. You know, what you should be focused on is trying to build credit for the business. It'll take time and all this other fun stuff. We had that talk, but it's a good goal to have. Start doing it in the business, start establishing it there. And he was on board with it. And I was like, so whoever told you to just set up the LLC, what did they say in regards to financing? So all 3 or 4 of us are going to go on the credit application? Because if you walk into a bank and say, hey, all 4 of us are partners, they're going to hand all 4 of you an application. So a couple things wrong with that, and that are going to shoot you in the foot. First of all, you're tying all your guys' credit liability together, which I think is bad idea. But what you're also doing is you're shooting yourself in the foot. And what I mean by that is you're getting actually 25% of the credit power that you could have had if you separated things out. So if each partner started building their own credit, they could always loan that to the partnership. So they quadruple their buying power just by keeping those separations.
And I think what you might be hitting on, and I think of it, doctors' practices a lot of times, they'll set up a partnership, an LLC taxed as a partnership, usually a professional entity, but each owner of that interest might be an S corp for that individual doctor, and you could develop credit in each one of those. Let's say you have a practice of 10 doctors. Why just do one when you could do 10? And then yes, they could use it to benefit the partnership together, but hey, now they have a lot of autonomy is what they could do. Now there are some non-discrimination rules if you have a bunch of employees, but for the most part, like if Eric and I were just doing a pizza shop together and we didn't have a bunch of employees and things, I have a lot of autonomy to do with whatever portion of the profit comes to me. You have autonomy to do with yours. Now, last step, there's a third step there, and this is a big one.
This is probably one of the biggest, right? I mean, this is all very important, but the jurisdiction. Where you set your company up is going to dictate how well any of this works for you. Because if you set it up in California, there's 27 different ways to pierce the corporate veil. Yeah. It's pierced over 50% of the time. I mean, yeah, you've got to. So it's like going to court and flipping a coin whether you're going to have protection, not win or lose, just protection. So jurisdiction is really going to come into play here. So especially for the individual elements. I mean, typically it depends. Everything depends on the business. But our example, pizzeria, we're in Nevada. We're going to set up a Nevada entity for that. Now, for our individual entities, I'm setting up Wyoming. I'm going Wyoming because I want some autonomy in my circumstances, because I'm not going to be doing anything active with it. I want some autonomy. I know we have plenty of videos out there about Wyoming. Wyoming does not require us to disclose the managers or members, so we do have some privacy there. But more importantly, you have charging order protection. That's the big one. So remember in the beginning, the original story we started with, what could have protected these folks from the bank account getting wiped out? If they had a partnership and each of them had their own Wyoming entities, that would have stopped it right there because of the charging order. And if you're not familiar with charging order, the way that it works is, so if a creditor has a judgment against me, the most they can hope for is the charging order against the Wyoming LLC. And I have to start satisfying that judgment as I pull profits out of the company.
It's basically a lien against the LLC's profit interest, what that partner receives.
Right. When I receive whatever profit I pull out of my LLC, they can't go after the partnership bank account. They can't even take the Wyoming bank account. They can get a lien against the LLC, basically.
That's it, and they have to hope that you distribute the profit. Nobody does this, by the way, because they don't get anything. It's exceedingly rare. Usually it settles it because the attorneys on the other side generally a contingency fee, or people just don't want to throw good money after bad. If I can't guarantee that I'm going to get paid, I'm not going to go down that road. But a good way to think about it is, Eric and I, partners, I don't want to know his business, he doesn't want to know mine. I want to protect myself. So at a minimum, I could say, hey, Eric, you set up the partnership itself, the LLC that we set up might be owned by an LLC that he owns. I have one that's I owned. The K1s go to those. I don't need to know, hey, however you want to tax it is up to you. But I also know that that's the party that's where it stops. So if he has personal liabilities and he's owning it through a separate LLC in Wyoming, for example, I know that he could run into a busload of nuns and I'm not going to have to deal with the aftermath. He could get divorced. I'm not going to have to deal with the aftermath. I have certain protections, not just because of the partnership entity we set up, the LLC that's owned, but also because the individual ownership of those is set up the right way. And for those of you guys who are like, oh, wait a second, I do syndications and things like that. At a minimum is have a living trust, so at least you're not involving your future generations to having to deal with the group. They don't like to have to deal with it on a personal level when it's a small entity. Your partner doesn't want to have to deal with it. Trust me on that one.
That's true.
Yeah, and so so does that charging order then change the risk profile of the endeavor if you and I were going into business?
It would for me, and I'm sure it would for you as well, because I know so as your partner now, I know the liability is really with the pizza shop, and that's pretty much it. You know, whatever you've got going on in your life, it's not going to bleed through to the partnership or me.
Yeah, so let's go back to the three brothers. They would have been very well served to have something in writing. If they had just had the base LLC for the most part, I don't know where they were located. Do you remember where they were doing
I
business?
don't remember.
So if you can use Wyoming and then register it in your state, but generally the better way is to have in-state, and then the ownership of that in-state entity might be the Wyoming entity, so that you're protecting the business from you, and you're also protecting you from the business. You've created two steps for anybody to actually get into your personal affairs, which, believe it or not, entities periodically in some states do get pierced. Well, now they're stuck in Wyoming, right? So anybody who ever says, well, I'm in California, you can't do anything for me. It's like, well, yeah, actually, if you own it and you're in California, the judge is looking at you, you're in the same court. If it's Wyoming, we just created another layer where they get to go travel. And it changes the whole dollar amount and how that thing works. But what if somebody's in a partnership right now? What if they're structured all screwy? What can they do?
So if you're in a partnership right now and you're looking at this, biting your nails, that's good. I mean, you probably should. Call us. You can type consult in the comments below, and we'll reach out and make sure that we set up a consultation with you. More than happy to take a look at any documents that you may have already gotten together. Don't despair though. I'd rather call, find out, and have the conversation. Hey, here's where I'm at. What do you think? We can take a look at what you have. We can make recommendations. We can beef up what you had. Remember, the only time we really can't do something is like you've already directly been sued in your operation. And even then, I wouldn't say don't call, because what if it happens again? We want to make sure that you're going to have those protections.
And you could still proceed. You proceed with caution even under that circumstance. It always depends on whether it makes you insolvent, the claims, and it's doing structuring even after the fact doesn't automatically mean you're toast. It means you got to be very careful about the avoidable transactions and fraudulent transfer rules, things like that, but it's not a death knell. Hey, I can't do anything. No, you can still do reasonable business planning. It may not protect you from those claims, just know that.
to protect you moving forward, and then you have a very clear blueprint of how your business is going to operate anyways, or any other issues that you may not have thought of.
Yeah, I guess I would say that even if you're in deep doo-doo now, don't delay. It's a lot of lawyers will be like, oh, sayonara, you're done. No, it's not the way it quite works, but you just have to be very cognizant of what the claim. Is it a real claim? Is it frivolous? What's the amount that's a claim? Because if you're getting sued for $20,000 and you got $2 million,
It's fine.
it doesn't mean you're frozen, right? It's, as long as you don't make yourself insolvent and try to move it all. But if they still have recompense, recourse against you of other assets, you don't have anything to worry about. All right, so you mentioned you can always type in consult and talk to somebody, talk to Eric, to see whether or not what your situation is and what your options are. That's usually where it is. It's like, hey, there's A, B, and C. Here's the different flavors. This is the type of thing you can do. And if you know anybody who's getting into business, or you know somebody who's in business with partners and you're like, oh no, I know that they're just doing it on a handshake because they got that mentality, share this video with them and then like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys later.